Okay, so I met a new set of coworkers today, and that happens a lot because as a substitute teacher, if I sub somewhere different, then those are just like my coworkers for the day. And today I was at a school that had pretty cool coworkers or people working there because they invited me to have lunch with them. And the first thing they wanted to talk about was sleep paralysis, which is always fun to talk about because I don't know too much about it, but what I do know is always fun to talk about. So I remember learning about it one of like my third or fourth year at San Diego State, and I was taking a neuropsychology class, and one of the units was on sleep disorders, and there was like the sleep behavior disorder, which is sleepwalking, where people like act out their dreams, and sleep behavior disorder is kind of like the opposite of sleep paralysis. So sleep paralysis is when your mind is quote unquote awake. So you're conscious or partially conscious, but your body is completely paralyzed. Because when you go to sleep, there's this neurotransmitter that's released called acetylcholine that essentially paralyzes you, or it like locks in all your muscles so that you can't move while you're sleeping. But your mind is kind of in between consciousness and being asleep or completely conscious. Some people, when they experience sleep paralysis, they're either dreaming that they're paralyzed or they're awake in a way, but they can't move, they can't speak, they can't do anything. So it causes like really high anxiety, and people almost have to trick their minds into like waking up so their bodies will move. And it can be really, really scary because it can turn into a hypnagogic hallucination. And I used to think that I had a lot of sleep paralysis, but turns out I would have hypnagogic hallucinations, which is when you're also paralyzed. It's like sleep paralysis, but times 10. Like you start hallucinating shit. And I used to have these for a few years. I remember they would happen very often, and it's usually when you're fighting sleep. So if like you're on the couch and it's only like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. and you're like, I don't want to fall asleep yet, like I don't want to nap because I'm gonna sleep all night. I'm gonna sleep all day and I'm not gonna be able to sleep at night. So you're just fighting falling asleep. So you're sitting on your couch and you're looking forward at your phone and the table or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're dozing off and you see like the face of a demon coming out of the blinds or something, or you hear a knock on the door and you see it open from the corner of your eye, and you see somebody walk in and whisper your name, and the whole time you can kind of see this happening in front of you and in your peripheral vision, but you can't move, you can't speak, you can't do anything. And sometimes, you can imagine whole like creatures or like items or like demons like stepping on your body, and you can feel the pressure and hear them and feel them and everything. It's like full-blown auditory, tactile, visual, sensational hallucinations that you have during sleep paralysis, and it's fucking terrifying. It's like you're living a nightmare. It's like you're having a nightmare, but you're awake. You're consciously having a nightmare. And I used to have these, and I used to think they were really scary, so I would, because I was conscious, I would like force my brain really, really hard to like physically break out of it. So I feel like if I can get my arm to move, then it's gonna snap me out of it and I'm gonna like wake up. So one time it happened to me while I was babysitting, and I was babysitting an adult, so it's not really babysitting, but I was a caregiver, and I didn't want to fall asleep because that's bad, right? I don't want to fall asleep while I'm taking care of somebody, but he was off alone in his room, so technically I probably could have napped for like 10 minutes and go unnoticed, but I didn't want to, so I was fighting falling asleep, and I went into a hypnagogic hallucination where I was asleep, quote unquote, on the couch, and I saw my client's parents come into the front door, and they stood in front of me, and they were yelling at me to wake up, and they were telling me, how could you go to sleep? You're not taking care of our son. And I couldn't move and I couldn't do anything about it. And then when I snapped out of it, there was nobody there. So it was completely just a hallucination. And it was nuts. But yeah, so that's what happens in like sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations. And you can look it up. It's a benign condition. Like you're not sick if this happens to you. There's nothing wrong with your brain, but it's just like really, really scary. But I guess when you get used to having them, or if you have them a lot, it kind of helps to know that there's nothing wrong with you, and it's just like a little nightmare that you're gonna snap out of in a couple minutes. But the opposite of a sleep paralysis situation would be sleep behavior disorder, where there's not enough acetylcholine. So your body isn't being paralyzed in your sleep, which is why some people, if they're dreaming about sitting on a chair and drinking coffee, they literally will sit up on their bed, cross their legs, and hold a little cup of coffee in their hand and pretend like they're drinking coffee. Like they act out their dreams. And they'll speak, their eyes are moving like crazy because they're in the REM cycle, and it's crazy. So it's basically the opposite. One, acetylcholine is released, so then it paralyzes you, and the other one, there's not enough acetylcholine, so you're not paralyzed and you're acting it out. That's it, I think. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Talking about the brain is always fun, and then talking about sleep is fun too, because everybody sleeps. And then people who don't realize like the importance of sleep, because not being able to sleep is one of like the scariest, most unhealthy things that you could do to your brain. And it's fucking shitty, because a lot of times people they don't get to choose when they sleep, and they just can't. And I'm sorry if you are an insomniac, because your brain is like suffering a lot. Sorry.